Alright, so first things first, what is this forensic science thing we speak of? Forensic science is basically using the scientific method and knowledge to matters of law and criminal investigation. So we're using science to catch criminals. And in general, a forensic scientist has two roles. The first is they're going to collect and analyze physical evidence. And this is stuff that they would collect at the crime scenes, like hair and fibers and glass and fingerprints and blood. So it's their job to collect and analyze that for relevant information to the case. And then they might be called as expert witnesses in a court case to bring their expertise if they're talking about a certain piece of evidence that was collected at the crime scene. So they would explain their findings and what the data means, what conclusions you can draw from it. I'm going to talk about some major people involved in the development of forensic science techniques. And the first gentleman, his name is Alphonse Bertillon. He is from France. And this guy was interesting. First of all, he has an awesome mustache. All right, and second, he was the first to develop a personal identification system for people. Right, and he was doing this before we had fingerprints. And what he would do he took prisoners from prison in France. So this was kind of before, ethics and science experiments kind of took forefront. What he would do is he would take the prisoners and he would take a whole bunch of different body measurements, so like the length of their foot and the length of their forearm and the length of their ear and the length of their head, and he would record these measurements. And what you could do is you could, let's say you caught one of these gentlemen, these repeat offenders, and you could take their measurements and compare it to a log of measurements he had on people and kind of match them up. Right, so this was our first ID system before fingerprints. It's not precise, it's not that accurate because some people could have very similar dimensions to their body. But, we worked with what we had back then. This was like the 1910s. Right, next guy was Francis Galton, and he developed the classification system for fingerprints that we still use today. So he classified the patterns into arches and whorls and loops. We're going to talk more about that in the fingerprinting chapter. But he wasn't the first to do the fingerprinting. There were some other people in like India who were using it for criminal investigations, but he's the first guy to actually put some science behind it. So that's why he gets the credit for it. Right, these two guys, Landsteiner and Lotz, are involved with the blood evidence. Right, Landsteiner is this gentleman down here, and he developed the A, B, and O blood typing system. So he had blood samples, he tested for proteins that were in them, and saw that sometimes if he added things called antibodies to them, they clumped together, and sometimes they did not. And using all of this data that we're going to talk about during the blood evidence chapter, serology, he classified them into different types. Okay, so Landsteiner developed the ABO blood typing system. Okay, and then we have this guy, Leon Lotz, who developed a method for identifying a blood type from stains on fabric that were found at a crime scene. Okay, so these are two big steps in terms of using blood evidence to link it to a crime. All right, the next gentleman is Calvin Goddard. He was a colonel in the U.S. Army, and he found Okay, so the next guy is Calvin Goddard, and he is the father of ballistics. So he figured out you could link these striations or markings on bullets and their casings to the barrels of different weapons. Okay, so he actually developed helped develop some new microscope techniques for this, and he was so adept at this that he ended up heading one of the first independent crime labs in the United States. All right, Albert Osborne, he has an interesting story. He started off teaching penmanship, so how to write properly so it is all pretty and beautiful. But his teaching of that got him interested in handwriting and papers and inks to the point where he became an expert at questioned documents, so documents that might be forged or fraudulent. So he developed document and handwriting analysis. You can still pick up this book. I personally have not read it, but I'm sure it's a good read. Edmond Locard was also from France. And Locard, he was nicknamed the Sherlock Holmes of France. He was very passionate about using scientific principles to catch criminals, to the point where he got the police department of Lyon to give him some space in their attic to make essentially our first crime lab. So he developed the first crime lab. And he also came up with this thing called Locard's exchange principle, which basically means that every contact leaves a trace. Okay, so no matter where you go, you're going to leave evidence behind. And I have this great quote from Locard that I'd like to read you. It's one of my favorites. And it goes, "Wherever he steps, whatever he touches, whatever he leaves, even unconsciously, will serve as a silent witness against him. Not only his fingerprints or his footprints, but his hair, the fibers from his clothes, the glass he breaks, the tool mark he leaves, the paint he scratches, the blood or semen he deposits or collects. All of these and more bear mute witness against him. This is evidence that does not forget. It is not confused by the excitement of the moment. It is not absent because human witnesses are. It is factual evidence. Physical evidence cannot be wrong. It cannot perjure itself. It cannot be wholly absent. Only human failure to find it, study, and understand it can diminish its value." All right, now, you might be surprised to see Sherlock Holmes up there, written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. But Sherlock Holmes, if you read them, are filled with examples of Sherlock using forensic science in his investigations. So if you read A Study in Scarlet, there's a great passage where he talks about this new technique for finding out blood stains that were on fabrics. And what this did is, initially people were very skeptical about using these scientific techniques to catch criminals. They weren't sure how reliable they were. Maybe the police were trying to pull one over them and caused some people to get arrested that weren't supposed to be. But Sherlock Holmes, since they loved these books so much, it popularized forensic science in their mind. It made it okay to use science to catch criminals. Okay, so we're going to put that down. It popularized science use to catch criminals. So it's kind of like the CSI effect now. Like everybody watches this, these CSI shows, and they expect that evidence to be in court cases now. They expect to see DNA and fingerprints and blood. All right, J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, their claim to fame is they set up the first crime lab in the United States. All right, and this crime lab gives its services to any police department that needs it, and it's become one of the biggest probably the biggest crime laboratory in the world.